The Armenian Relief Society of Western USA and the USC Institute of Armenian Studies proudly present an academic review of the world's oldest Armenian philanthropic organization. Saturday, September 18, 2010, from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Welcome to the University of Southern California. This is the Town and Gown, one of the oldest structures on campus. Goes back to maybe 90 years. And welcome to the USC Institute of Armenian Studies. The institute was established about 5 years ago, and it's multidisciplinary. And I have the burden of being the director of the institute. Today's symposium, we're well organized, but also it's a little different than what we're used to. The symposium focuses on looking at the past with a critical eye. We try to evaluate the past to plan for the future. So therefore, there'll be some history later on, but there'll be a lot of sectoral evaluation of the various aspects of ARS's activities in its 100 years. It's an awesome past. The trick is how to repeat that and excel it in the future. And that is a major, major challenge. So as we go on, we have very short presentations, and afterwards plenty of time to do question and answers. And please feel free to speak at that time.
I will begin with a definition of the word culture and briefly discuss how this definition can be applied within the context of the ARS. I will then give some information about the way in which the information I'm going to present today was collected, and then discuss the centrality of culture to the ARS, both in its history and current bylaws. This will be followed by a discussion of the way that different ARS programs incorporate Armenian cultural ideals and the preservation of Armenian culture by providing a picture of current and past ARS programming. This discussion will focus on the ways in which those programs attempt to preserve Armenian culture in different communities both in the US and abroad. I will close with some conclusions and recommendations to carry forth the ARS cultural preservation mission into its second century. Culture can be defined in a multitude of ways. In the dictionary alone, there are 10 different definitions for the noun form of the word and 2 for the verb form. The definitions that seem most relevant to my talk today, as well as to the ARS mission overall, are the 3 that I have listed here on this slide.
By the Artsakh government to place all schools under the auspices of the government by establishing a public, quote-unquote, school system, including the 12 SOSE kindergartens. I see this, I mean, I put it under challenges, but I see it as more of an advantage, only because as far as the curriculum goes, which is, I get very passionate about, curriculum. Aligning curriculum can become more of a reality, both for the SOSE kindergartens along with other schools in Artsakh. The establishment of educational programs in Javakh, yet ongoing, has been relatively slow. Future implications or recommendations. This is my last slide. Curricular changes should include the theory and practice of a discovery-based approach to education. In one of the documents, it was unclear as far as what type of assessments are being given both to students and teachers in these schools. And I think that if we had something which is more of a standardized system, that may help in assessment or collecting assessment information.
Before I go on any further, I want to make sure that everyone in the room understands that the opinions and the statements I'm about to give are mine and mine alone and do not reflect upon any of the organizations that I'm a member of. That's my little disclaimer. I have to do it at every speech. Thank you. Sometimes levity is important before you start giving a speech, and I'm going to start with a very quick and a short joke. I hope you enjoy it just as much as the person I tried it on first thing last night or this morning, and appreciate it as well. A very wealthy non-Armenian, or Armenian is not relevant, man who is also very well known to make large sums of donations, is out with his captain on his yacht. They get lost at sea, and the captain gets very, very stressed. They are now awash on an isolated island, and the gentleman is very calm, very collected, and the captain is getting more stressed by the seconds. And finally, the captain can't stand it and says, "Sir, why is it that you are so calm? We are isolated on this island. We're not going to ever get any help." And he says, "My son, I have donated $500,000 5 years ago to this wonderful organization. 2 years ago, I donated $250,000 more. Last year, I donated $1 million. Their fundraising is coming up in the next few days. I am sure they will find us for their donation."
And I'd also like to thank you because I'm a recipient of the Armenian Scholarship, and that helped me get through Columbia. So I sincerely appreciate it, and I apologize for not writing a thank you letter 2 years ago. Yeah, thank you very much. But as a graduate of UCLA, I'm kind of disappointed that you decided to hold this here. I'd like to thank Judge Sandersonian for her presentation, and you'll understand why she didn't want to do governance after you see my presentation. I have the misfortune of doing a more esoteric topic. And by the way, I'd like to thank all of the people who are watching online. The organizers decided to put this online. It's a great idea to share the knowledge that is being presented here. So my presentation is going to be on organizational governance. It's going to concentrate on two areas: the organizational structure of the ARS and the representation on the ARS's Central Executive Board. I feel that these two fundamental areas are areas that the ARS can feasibly improve in order to make governance of the organization more effective and equitable. I make the following observations and suggestions for improvement based on the premise that an organization, in this case the ARS, is concerned with standardizing its structure with the goal of modernizing itself and preparing itself for the future.
Good afternoon. It is really a great joy to be here together, and we thank Almighty God for granting us this wonderful opportunity to gather here with this fine group of individuals at the Building Blocks for the Future Symposium in celebration of the centennial of the Armenian Relief Society. We greet and commend the organizers of this important symposium, the ARS Western Region Executive and the USC Institute of Armenian Studies, who have united their efforts and brought together some of our finest minds from across the country here under one roof to review and commend the endeavors of the Armenian Relief Society throughout the last century, and to build upon those successes as they embark on a new century of service. We thank the day's panelists for their participation, each and every one of whom is bringing and later on will bring his or her unique perspective and insight to this symposium. And we thank also those who have come to encourage you all, the ARS, and who will no doubt leave today even prouder that we have such a remarkable organization in our community. As you know, our Pontiff, His Holiness Catholicos Aram I, has proclaimed the year 2010 as the year of the Armenian woman. And His Holiness has highlighted the place and the role of the women, and especially the Armenian woman, in the Bible in general, in the Armenian history, and in the educational field of the Armenian nation, in social service, in family, and above all, he highlighted and appreciated the volunteerism of the Armenian woman. And we know above all what is the role of the woman, of the Armenian woman in our case, in our families. Everything begins and starts from the family. Our mothers, our ladies, and the members of our society and community members live and serve with their love, with their sacrifice, and with their devotion. And as we are celebrating the centennial anniversary of the ARS, first and foremost, we salute the members of the Armenian Relief Society for their love, for their sacrifice, and for their devotion. And may the blessing of God be upon this great humanitarian and philanthropic organization, and upon the devoted members who selflessly dedicate their time and resources to the mighty task of providing for the needs of our people.
I really wouldn't look at the Red Cross right now. Hopefully we can look at them in a few years. But right now, the #1 fundraiser in America is the Salvation Army. They are a machine, and they do a wonderful job, and I adore them because of all the services they provide in this community and the communities around America. But they continually are #1, and they really are a machine. So I would look to them more than I would look to a Red Cross in terms of what are lessons we might learn for your society of how we can raise more money. The best donors I've found are those that are most passionate about your cause. When I first arrived at the Red Cross about 3 years ago, I said, well, how many billionaires do we know? Because there's a few of them in LA, and we really didn't know any of them. And so I worked and worked and worked, and about a year ago, actually got in front of several billionaires, and I thought, wow, we finally made it. And it was, at least on one of them, about a 30-minute conversation. The person couldn't wait to get out of the room. It had taken favor upon favor upon favor. And it was pretty clear that that person has tons of money, but they had no real interest in the Red Cross. They were busy with their other philanthropic activities. And it was a great lesson for me that, yes, of course you want to know people of wealth that support your cause, but the most important people in fundraising are the people that are most passionate about your cause. And it's probably people who would take, frankly, a Saturday of their own time to sit and listen to speakers and to kibbutz a little bit and to focus on issues that are important to you. So you really are the core fundraising base, I would argue, for your Relief Society. And thinking about what you're comfortable doing and how you want to do it, to me, would be a great thing to continue. Very briefly on volunteers. Within the Red Cross, we have, I would say, real challenges on keeping and motivating volunteers, even though most of our services are delivered by volunteers. And one of the biggest gaps we have is frankly a generational gap. We have a lot of amazing retired volunteers at Red Cross, and they do amazing work, and they like to do things very differently from the younger generations. For instance, my older volunteers love the certainty of getting together in a physical location, let's say once a week, and meeting with their other friends that they've now formed within the Red Cross. So they're very keen on a space, coming there, meeting for a couple of hours. I come to the meeting, and about an hour plus of it is them just, socializing because they know each other. They know each other's kids, and that's how they relate to each other. When I bring somebody young, let's say college age or young adult, into that setting, they are gone within one meeting. They do not want to be there. They don't care about the grandkids. They are the grandkid. And how they're relating, and this is foreign to me, but I get it through my 14-year-old Natalie, is they do most of their communicating, frankly, by text, right? Facebook. And they are very connected, but it has nothing to do with physical location.
Since the aim of this symposium is making a comprehensive assessment of ARS activities, I would like to cover the organization's involvement in the UN as an NGO or non-governmental organization. Being the representative of an NGO at the UN for 10 years, I know well the benefits of UN affiliation. First of all, since the ARS has a century-long experience of involvement in humanitarian causes and delivering emergency assistance to Armenians and non-Armenians alike, the UN and the international community could benefit greatly from ARS's extensive experience. Secondly, ARS members could benefit from UN affiliation by building partnerships with other NGOs from around the world and staying up to date with latest international developments. Thirdly, the ARS could use the UN and its various agencies as an international podium to raise important Armenian issues and concerns, since some NGOs have the right to speak during UN meetings and submit written statements which are translated and distributed to all delegates. The ARS would thus become an independent Armenian voice at the UN, in addition to the Armenian Republic's official UN representative. During my UN years in Geneva, Switzerland from 1978 to 88, when Armenia was not yet independent and therefore not a UN member, I had to constantly search for ways to be able to speak in UN chambers in order to bring Armenian issues to the attention of the international community. Since no Armenian organization was officially recognized by the UN as an NGO with the right to address the UN, I had to ask non-Armenian organizations to allow me to register as their UN delegate to be able to speak on the Armenian genocide and other issues. Initially, I represented the New York-based International League for Human Rights, a highly respected NGO at the UN. I then switched to the Paris-based Fédération Internationale des Ligues des Droits de l'Homme, International Federation of the Leagues of Human Rights, another prominent human rights group. Both of these groups, however, kept a close eye on my remarks to make sure that when I spoke as their UN delegate on various Armenian issues, I did not say anything contrary to their organization's policies and did not violate any UN procedures which would have jeopardized their own NGO status. Finally, one day, I was approached by the UN delegate of Native Americans, or American Indians, commonly known, asking me to represent their NGO, the Indigenous World Association, at the UN Human Rights Commission and Subcommission on Prevention of Discrimination and Protection of Minorities. The Native American delegation could no longer afford to fly twice a year from San Francisco to Geneva and stay for several weeks each time at one of the most expensive cities in the world. I gladly accepted their kind offer, and from then on represented the Native Americans at the UN. They gave me the full freedom to speak on any issue. I still remember the surprised faces of the Turkish delegates at the UN the first time that the chairman of the Human Rights Commission called the representative of the Indigenous World Association to the podium, and I began speaking about the Armenian genocide. Without going into lengthy details, I would like to simply tell you that as an NGO, we were able to defeat the powerful anti-Armenian efforts of the Turkish government and its many allies, and have the UN, for the first time, adopt a report in 1985 recognizing the Armenian genocide. Returning to the ARS and Armenian NGOs in general, it is unfortunate that no Armenian organization has so far attained the top category of what is called general consultative status with the UN, which would allow it to make oral interventions and circulate written statements to all delegates. The second NGO category is called special consultative status, which includes organizations that are involved in a small number of activities covered by the Economic and Social Council. The third category is called roster, which includes groups that have very limited participation with the UN and its various organs. The ARS is in this category. Consultative status is granted by ECOSOC, or Economic and Social Council, upon the recommendation of the Committee on NGOs, which is comprised of 19 member states. 5 of them are African states, 4 from Asia, 4 from Latin America and Caribbean, 4 from Western Europe and other countries, and 2 from Eastern Europe.
But first, the one message that I would like to, convey to you, and you can leave after that if you want, is that, we're talking about an organization that does not just sit around somewhere in some country where all conditions, in peaceful conditions, and distribute aid and help to people who are in need across the world. If there's one thing that comes across from reading the history of the ARS, looking into the archives, is that this organization has been right where the action, right where the catastrophe, right where the massacres, right where... So it has been at the center of where the Armenian community and where beyond even the Armenian community needed its help, needed its assistance. So this is the kind of prism through which we should look at the history of the ARS. I want to say a couple of words about the sources I've used. I've benefited extensively from the ARS archives. I've used several newspaper sources from early 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. So you're going to see some newspaper photographs and material, I believe, that have been buried in newspapers for a very long time. And I just would like to thank everybody in Boston who helped me out with this. And in particular, Tatu Sonens Papazian and Jivar Bejekian, who were instrumental in providing me with particularly the photographs and also some reading material. So that's good. I have 10 minutes now, right?
No, you have a little more. You have 15.
So, okay, thanks. So 100 years of solidarity, humanitarian resistance.
18.
Okay. That's good. So is it going to increase every time? Okay.
No.
Of course, any standard history of the ARS would start by saying that, you know, the person who founded the ARS is Agnuni, right? But of course, if you look into the archives, etc., it is pretty clear that the Armenian Red Cross, or the ARF Red Cross as it was known back then, under different names, was actually functioning in the United States before even Agnuni got here and organized it.
Term empowerment has very different meanings when used, socially or politically. And it's also a term that is often misused, misled, misunderstood. The basic meaning of empowering someone or to empower is passing legal authority to an individual, to another individual. In other words, allowing that individual to find the power that is within them and release it and use it and utilize it for what they can do, for their betterment. Empowerment is also a term that is often confused with suffrage. Suffrage was a right that was granted by a government, such as the United States in 1920. On August 26th, we celebrated the 90th anniversary of the women's right to vote. But once again, it was our given right as women to vote. But we had to wait for a government to grant it before we fought for our rights. So empowerment is not power. Don't misunderstand the fact that power exists in that word. Power exists within people. It's through their knowledge and their motivation that they get power. Empowerment is the actual realization that change is necessary and the release of power within every individual. You know, often there are bills that are passed by governments that boast about equality. They state, you know, equal rights bill. We're talking in the United States, the civil rights movement. But in fact, these bills, they guarantee equal rights, but they're limiting that individual's rights within the constraints of a government and a bill, because they do not allow for that individual to further their knowledge. So now, do we have a better idea of what empowerment is per se? We're moving forward to the ARS. The ARS embarked on empowerment of women prior to suffrage being granted in the United States, 10 years prior. In fact, after hearing what Khachik said, the ARS, which was the Armenian Red Cross, embarked on empowerment maybe 10, maybe 20 years prior to women's suffrage being granted around the world. So it's been noted that Armenian women's groups existed in the United States through the late 1800s. But it wasn't until 1910 that they were all organized under one umbrella. And why was this important? Because under one umbrella with Agnuni's vision, bringing the Armenian women together to create an environment where women with their peers can better educate themselves. Maybe, yeah. And also, it gave each woman the necessary tools to become much tougher, much stronger, to defend herself. Ognoni's vision was well ahead of his time. He had the foresight to know that Armenian women possessed a special bond when it came to the love and devotion of their country. His process of unification became a school for the members of the ARS. It became a haven for women to express themselves freely, to be the bearers of their own decisions, to take action, and to service the genocide-stricken Armenian people with humanitarian aid, even with the limited resources possessed in the diaspora.
Բարև, իմ անունս Թալար Ալեքսանյանն է եւ ես Cal State Northridge-ի առաջին դարվա աշակերտ եմ։ Ես շատ ուրախ եմ, որ գրծա այսօր քալ այս սիմպոզիումին եւ ուրախ եմ, որ ARS-ը խաղապար ունեցավ, որ այսպիսի սիմպոզիում ընե եւ որպես երիտասարդ շատ հաճելի ժամանակ ունեցավ բոլոր օրը. I was very fortunate to listen to all the different speakers and listen from their area of expertise and how they connect that to the Armenian American community. So overall, I was very impressed by what I saw today, and I'm sure that if we continue to go on like this in the upcoming years, more and more people will come and youth will be able to come more, and we'll be able to bridge the generations together and continue on supporting the Armenian cause.
Hello, my name is Silva Sevlian. I'm a master's student at USC. I think that this event is very important for the students here and for the women, the Armenian women around the world. We've been learning a lot about a variety of subjects, but basically about public service. And so 100 years strong, I hope we go another 100 years.
Thank you very much. Parevces անունս Նորա Սասունյան է եւ շատ ուրախ եմ հոս ալալ այսօր, որովհետեւ հայօգնության միությունը շատ կարևոր գործ կնե եւ մենք հիմա աշակերտներ ենք USC կհաջորդենք, ես երրորդ տարիս մեջ եմ եւ շատ ուրախ եմ, որ հոսենք այսօր, որովհետեւ հայօգնության միությունը մեր աբական է եւ մենք Հայաստանի աբական ենք եւ կրնանք շատ լավ կորձնել իրենց համար եւ օգնել